Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to be starting at 12:01.
Perfect. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we enabled
perfect.
the mics and the video right now. So
perfect. There, I was waiting before. Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Linda. We see you on screen Isabella and Jacques.
Bonjour, Jacques. Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Do you hear me? It's Isabella.
Hi,
Yes.
Isabella.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So we'll be starting in 1 minute. Let's give everybody 1 minute, and then we'll start at 12:01.
This is a perfect day and a perfect time for a webinar because it's raining outdoors. So we wouldn't be outdoors anyways.
Exactly. And it is raining quite a bit.
Yeah, in Toronto too, Maple. Are you in Ottawa?
Yes.
Yes. I'm between Belleville and Kingston. Yes. What about yourself?
Ontario, Toronto, Maple.
Toronto.
Canada,
Nice.
Wonderland area. Still
Okay.
rainy, but no snow. It's nice.
No snow.
Yes.
This winter,
Exactly.
From winter so long. So
No.
happy.
The lesser of the two.
Yes. So thank you for saying where you're from, Isabella, from Toronto. I'm wondering if you can write in your chat where you're from, because it's always nice to know where you're calling from, where you're joining from. It's just nice for us to know as facilitators.
Understood. I will do it.
From Montreal, Toronto.
And then I was gonna. Bonjour, Mathilde.
And I see Montreal
Jacques
raining. Oh,
Yes.
no. I know there's rain. So it's helping our grass, our flowers grow. So yeah.
And I was going to throw in is now that you've indicated where you're from, where you're calling from, perhaps where you'd like to be calling from. Where would we like to be?
Italy.
We
Me
need
too.
another webinar to talk.
Italy. Yes, that sounds so
Yes.
wonderful.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, again. So we're gonna start the webinar right now. Thanks for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about bridging today's change management discipline with tomorrow's adaptive leadership capabilities. We do have Sophie and Sylvie in here. What the session, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen, right, with the presentation?
It's not in presentation mode on my end, but maybe it is on your end.
Oh, so let me see if I can, give me 1 sec. Let me switch to presentation mode here first.
Et ça, Japan, Jacques, aussi. That would be nice.
Nice.
Okay, how about now?
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Perfect. So, what we're looking at today is there's 4 things we're looking at is that learning outcomes plus, the first one is differentiate between structured change management versus adaptive leadership. We're looking at learning the nature of a change, technical versus adaptive. We're looking at applying 3 practical tools to apply how to lead more effectively in ambiguous and complex environments, which we face today, right? And then we're also looking at sharing an overview of our Leaders Change program, which Sophie and Sylvie has worked on. And the stars of our today's session is Sophie and Sylvie. Sophie, maybe if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll continue with Sylvie afterwards.
Yes, thank you very much, Murat, and welcome everyone. It's great to see you here today. And change management, change leadership is something that I'm super passionate about, because it's, as we always hear, often it's the variable that's the most common and unchangeable change, especially in these times. And we'll tell you more about that in a moment when we start. But just to let you know that I've been accompanying teams and leaders find their way in times of change for over 2 decades now, and very much interested in building that capacity in leaders and in their teams. So over to you, Sylvie.
Oui, bonjour. Hi, everyone. Sylvie Seguin-Brandt. I also am very passionate about leadership, especially from a performance perspective and wellness, and, how can we best navigate, achieve results, but also do it while being sane. So I arrive with more than 12 years experience as a management executive in the federal government. And so bring in my leadership experience, and also a certified leadership coach. And so for me, it's always a pleasure to be able to accompany others in the context of what practical aspects can we focus on in order to have the impacts that we desire, especially from a leadership perspective. And so I'm happy to be with you, and happy to be working with Murat as well as Sophie.
Perfect. Thanks, Lily. My name is Murat Sessan. I'm a managing partner with AMDAS. I'm just a pretty face on this webinar, so that's my role. We only have 97 slides. I'm just kidding. I think it's, I think we have less than, 15. And then we're looking at having this session more interactive, right? So feel free to jump in and, have any engagement. Sophie, over to you for the next piece.
Thank you. Thank you. And we promise we won't be reading our 97 slides. So why this webinar, and why talk about adaptive leadership at this moment in time? So just to give us some context, some of the challenges that you may that are known to you, but that I will just take some time to name, around change fatigue that's quite present in our different workplaces and work environments, because of competing priorities and because of pivoting. We've grown so good and agile at pivoting, but comes with that some fatigue, misalignment across leadership levels. So hearing some information, some directions, but these directions sometimes being in parallel rather than being focused, laser focused in the same direction. Resistance or slow adoption, or some researchers, some practitioners calling it preoccupation. So because we're stuck on being preoccupied, it's more difficult to move on to adopting change. And then because difficulty of translating strategy. So yes, we want the change is required, is necessary, but how do we do that in action? So these are some of the common challenges, and some of these may resonate with you, and you may have other examples as well. So, you'll be invited to share that for sure in this webinar today. But what's missing is not necessarily more strategies, but it's that capacity to translate that strategy into actions, into consistency, but into also tuning into what's emerging, what's shifting as we are implementing some of these actions. So it's tuning in, it's listening, and it's creating one. I like saying it's creating one with the environment, creating one with the ecosystem. So with the teams, with the environment outside of our teams, outside of our organization. So it's tuning into all of that, and then adjusting. So we'll talk more about that adjusting part. So the impact, well, by doing that, the impact is stronger adoption, more sustained results, being focused on our deliverables, greater alignment and leadership coherence, and also increased resilience. So it's building resilience together as a community within this ecosystem, within this organization. So let's hand it over to you and ask you a question that I'll ask Sylvie to facilitate.
Right. Next slide, Murat.
Oh, sorry, I should say next slide. That's the cue. Sorry.
Yes. So as a leader, whether you have the title or not, because we can be leaders, as you know, regardless of our role that we play, or a person managing change. What's your biggest struggle regarding the changes that you're facing? And so it use the QR code here. I tested out yesterday, so it should be easy enough to navigate. Put in as many words as you want. Like, what is your biggest struggle when you are thinking about the changes that you're facing? And then Sophie will pop up the cloud word as you populate. Feel free. It's not a one-shot deal here. You can populate as much as you want. Sophie, let us know when you're ready to pop it up. So
Yes. So perhaps
can...
Murat, let me see. So I'm seeing some words are being shared, lack of leadership alignment, adaptability. So perhaps I can share this so that you can read what I'm reading. So Murat, can you give me, okay. And I will, share this. It might be a bit slow, so continue putting in your words in there in that word cloud. And I don't think I'll be able to do that because there's some lag where I am located in the hills and in with the computer. So I will read. I will actually read the feedback. So what's coming up, great feedback. Thank you. Nice. So diversity of engagements, lack of clear change vision, lack of time, resistance, questioning, unknown, the unknown, lack of leadership, stakeholder alignment, lack of alignment, sense making, peace of mind, diversity of engagement. Yeah, so see, these are some of the words that are coming up. My biggest struggle regarding the changes that I am facing are lack of peace of mind, I'm imagining. That's a struggle. How can I have some peace of mind? Great words.
Yes, because when we have lack of peace of mind, that means our mind is busy and we are preoccupied and we're thinking about it a lot. And so lots of elements that contribute to what you're facing. So as individuals, how are you facing that? And I think it's important to see it from an individual, a person perspective too. That element becomes important. So over to you, Sophie.
Thank you.
Continue.
So we'll move to the next slide, Murat. So as Sylvia was saying, the individual is the human level, and we'll talk about that. So we'd like to present to you the loose grip approach. And we're calling it the loose grip approach because we're using the analogy of tennis or pickleball, if you're a pickleball player, or badminton. But the tennis analogy is when you're holding onto your racket, when you're holding on to the handle. I'm not personally a tennis player, but one of the things that I remember when I was being coached was when you're holding on to that handle, it's important to have a good grip to it, of course, positioning your fingers and your hand appropriately, but keeping that lightness, that softness in the wrist, not to get injured, but also to be agile and to be able to move quickly and to be effective, when we hit the ball. So the analogy comes from there, having that loose grip on change management, but change leadership. And change leadership requires both the change management piece, of course, and the adaptive leadership. So let me say a little bit more about that. So when we're talking about change, I just want us to have a common definition of change, which is we are in a current situation and we have a desired situation. This gap between the current and the desired is the change piece. So we have this way of working in the process and we wish to work differently. We have process A and we're moving to process B. So this change is what we're talking about in this webinar. So process is one example, but it could be a culture change. It could be a strategic direction change. So it could be a multitude levels of change within an organization, a service, a department, a team. And it could be at the individual level as well. So we are talking about the loose grip approach when talking about change management and the adaptive, and I will go through each one in more detail. How do they compare? But as you notice, the little plus sign in between both graphics is to indicate that we need both. And that's the thing about change leadership. We absolutely need to have focus. We need structure. We need to have a plan, yes. And we also need to be able to be okay and comfortable in the unknown because it's going to happen. To be in that tension spot, to be in that moment of, well, this is the plan, but it's not going as planned, or this is the plan, and it's not exact. Some new information is popping up, which it was not anticipated in our plan. So this happens, and the adaptive leadership is being able to lean into that, as well as have some kind of plan, but holding it loosely, the loose grip. Yes, the plan, holding the plan loosely so that we can have that agility, that capacity to adapt when it's necessary. So let's go into the next slide and let me give you more examples. So what do I mean by a loose grip? By combining change management and adaptive leadership. So let's say the first step is plans and milestones, which we find in change management. Well, that is the equivalent of experiments and learnings in adaptive leadership. And yes, we need both. So using the example of implementing a new digital system, let's say for HR or a customer relationship management system, in change management, we need to have a project plan with phases. We need milestones. We need to know when are we going live. We need to have some training, competency development. We need to have measurable success. What are our success indicators? So those are change management. And in the adaptive leadership component, we're talking about running pilots instead of having a go live date only. So let's try and test. Let's see what resonates, what doesn't. Some of the questions that we'll ask are, what are the learnings that I'm from how people are actually responding to the new system? What's the feedback? So it's really leaning in to hear what's emerging that I may not have planned for so that I can adjust as we go. So that's the first step. Second step, if we go to the next slide, is the loose grip, but at the level of control and alignment and sense making and engagement. So the example here that we would like to offer is the workforce adjustment or budget reductions. So we're seeing this not only in government, but we're seeing this in a multitude of organizations in the private and public sector. And so using that example from a control and alignment perspective, we're talking about how can I have clear messaging from leadership? And how do we make sure it's cascading so that we have consistency in the messages? Let's prepare some Q&As, questions and answers, so that we have the same information circulating, the same script, so that we are all aligned. And so consistency is really important in change management when we are at the control and alignment phase. In adaptive leadership, we're calling it sense making and engagement because we actually want to be in dialogue. We actually want to open up the conversation to hear more about how people are viewing it, experiencing it, and responding to it. So some of the things we'll see is we'll create dialogue spaces like town halls or different types of meetings where people can actually come in and ask questions and give us some feedback on our questions to them. And it's about acknowledging the impact of the process undergoing, the change process that's undergoing or that's about to start. So we're actually at a phase when we're in the sense-making engagement of acknowledging people's experience, recognizing the impact that it has for them, and then you know, listening into the feedback, listening in to the trends. What are trending messages? What are trending experiences? And listening into that and using that information to adjust. So moving to the next phase of the change leadership that we are calling is known outcomes. So known outcomes become emergent outcomes in adaptive leadership, both important. So if we use the example of culture change initiative this time, so we're in a culture change initiatives in an organization. It could be for a team, a department, an entire organization. What it means is that defining the target. What are the values and behaviors that we want to be seeing? So we want to define that with behavioral indicators, even being very specific so that we know, how can we know when we see it? So we'll have training programs roll out to help people understand what the behavior will look like with respect to these values that we'd like to see in this new culture. So we want KPIs, we want to measure. So that's good. And in the adaptive leadership complement to this is having being aware how these behaviors are shifting. How is that shifting? Because, you know, when we go into measurements, we tend to think in a more linear, this is what we want, we define it, we announce it, we show it, we explain it, so now we should see it. But in reality, in human dynamics, things take time, and sometimes time takes twists. So where are these twists and how is that happening? So it's about listening and tuning into that as well. So, and sometimes we have a culture defined in our mind and on paper and in a really great plan, which is necessary. And sometimes when we start seeing the implementation of our change process, we start seeing new information emerge about the culture. And again, it's listening into that, tuning into that. So what is this informing me? What words, what behaviors, and what ways of seeing and operating am I observing in people so that I can use this information to adjust my plan and perhaps even adjust my language around that change process. And going to the final stage of the change leadership on the next slide is reduce resistance. So oftentimes in change leadership or change management, we refer to resistance and creating adoption, change adoption. And so in the language of adaptive leadership, we're not as much concerned about reducing resistance. We're more interested in where are the tensions and even where are the frictions and how can we work with them, because they are valuable information for us to work with. So it's like leveraging the tension and the friction and to be able to respond better, to be able to choose better approaches and ways to be in collaboration with people, with the system, with the ecosystem. So the reduce the resistance is, where are the resistors? Where are the patches of resistors? And then maybe we should add more consistent communication and training. And maybe we should consider removing barriers, which can be to some measure effective. But in these times, working with people and getting them involved seems to be doing much better because we're collaborating, because we're using collective intelligence, but also noticing ourselves as people moving the change, accompanying the change, or leading it. How are we with the tension and with the friction? And what's our own behavior regarding that? And so being aware of that and noticing the impact of that is really important. So we've just given you 4 examples. We wanted you to understand our loose grip approach. So let's try things out. We said we would have 3 tools. So here's tool number 1. Sylvie, over to you.
Okay, so you've heard a lot, and I know I'm very conscious that it's lunchtime. So hopefully you're eating at the same time, so you have the energy for this, because this will be a part of the practical aspects. So this one, you just, think of a change, current situation you're leading. Using the little framework that Sophie talked about, and I'm sure that you are familiar with some aspects of that change management aspects. Identify the change management aspects that you have in place or you need. Like, for example, we're talking about plans, milestones, just as a reminder, control, alignment, reduce resistance, known outcomes. So identify those change management aspects. And then once you have that, then move to the second part, which is the plus, that identify the adaptive aspects. What is my mindset? What's the cultural mindset that exists in the context of this change? What's the identity that we have? What's the behaviors? Because culture is really defined by behaviors, as collective of behaviors. So what are the behaviors that we're seeing around this change? What are mine? What are the ones of my team, perhaps my colleagues, my peers, the person I report to? And so what am I seeing that are in place or needed? And so I'll pause a little bit, give us a little bit of time here to think about that and jot them down. And I'm inviting you to whether speak up and talk about it in a couple minutes or start putting it in the chat. Identifying the aspect of change as well as adaptive, what is in place, what is needed in that context. And let's make it practical so you can step away from this webinar with something already that you can put in place based on the investment of time and energy that you put in for this webinar. Any questions?
Yeah, just simple one about my possibility to put something in chat. I had so many comments, but couldn't put for some reason. It showed that chat is available only during the meeting, but I am on the meeting and I could not. Anyway, I have very good example about the mindset, and I will tell you right now because it's a recent one. I needed to address the fear of artificial intelligence displacement. It was one of the projects related to the contact center as a service adoption, and it was really interesting conversations, but I took a little bit more time than usual just to find out what are the benefits, how to show people. So what I came up with as a outcome from this particular exercise, that very important to start contacting stakeholders in branches and units much earlier than we coming to the processes and step out with the real adoption. And as a program manager, I usually monitor and control adoption changes during the program project life cycle, and my change management plan, I adjust accordingly to those coming during life cycle program life cycle changes. So a lot of experience, but absolutely different than yours. And I deeply appreciate you guys invited me because I am seeing another side of this particular adoption loop, what you're presenting. It's a little bit different angle. As you know, this famous triangle, which I usually follow up, it's from Precise. It's leadership, sponsorship, then change management, and project management, all three together. So it was my core. Now you're shifting to diagnose my experience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So thank you so much for sharing that as an example. And so in the interest of time, we're just going to continue Murat, could you just, because there's other things that are going to appear when you press the button in the context, but thank you, Isabella, for sharing that. from that, because what hurdles might be in place that prevent you from mobilizing your team to drive results. And it's helping you to, if I am approaching from this perspective, from both perspective, am I able to identify them? And am I using strategies or actions and behaviors that are going to help me achieve or have the impact that I want? And the next one,
So
Moran?
Sylvia, I can answer that.
Sure. Yes.
Just, I like your question. So what hurdles might be in place? So sometimes what I notice about when I manage change, the hurdle is not as much in the environment, but more about me. I sometimes notice I'm the hurdle because I can be speedy. I can want things are clear in my mind, and I know where I'm going, and it makes sense. And I may be more in control of the change that's happening. So I'm not impacted as emotionally. So because of my speed and because of I'm enthusiastic or maybe I'm happy about it, doesn't mean everyone else is. So I become the hurdle to the situation.
Thank you, Sophie, for sharing that, because it's getting a greater awareness of where am I? What are my tendencies? What are my go-tos? What are my automatics in the context of me as a leader? For example, your speediness, and those who are participating, you may have others. Some orient from a need to get all the facts, right? And therefore could be looking for a lot of facts before taking an action, and so on. And so it's important that component of self-awareness becomes really important. And you'll see at the end, our program does include a self-awareness portion element, because it is important to know what's happening for me and what are my needs and what are my go-tos that are in place in order to be able to assess what's going on around us. You can invite you to put it in the chat also if you have any other hurdles that you see. And then the next question that's come in is, what adaptive aspects are more difficult for you to do? And so in looking at change and what we've presented so far, what are the ones that are more difficult for us? For example, if it's a lack of clarity, right? As a leader, for me, when there's lack of clarity, it was the opposite. For me, it was, hoo-hoo, I can interpret this how I want, and I can affect the change the way I want. And that was for me, whoo-hoo, good. While I had colleagues who needed more context and needed more details around it. And so which aspects of what we've presented are more difficult? For some of us, could be establishing milestones. It could be a plan. It could be our ability to slow down, to be able to ask questions. Isabella, you were saying like a while ago, asking questions. So that could be. So it's important to reflect on these as we move forward. Sophie, did you want to add anything else?
No, I was just going to say for the adaptive aspect, it's about leaning in. So am I leaning in and listening into what's happening in the system, in the team, in the environment? Am I listening to that more and not just about my plan? So it's good to have both. And so I would add that.
Yes, because, and do I have the ability to do it?
Yeah.
Like, is there something preventing me? Is there an internal barrier inside of me that is preventing me? And am I aware of it? And often it's beliefs that we have created. And so those are really important from that perspective.
And Leanne just said, coming up with KPIs is the challenge. So thank you for adding that.
Yes. And I see Jacques is writing, so we'll see it. So it's being able to name it. And sometimes we suffer from Wonder Woman or Superman syndrome. We think that the minute we get a role in management, we're supposed to be able to know all the answers and all that. And when you start realizing, no, the pressure is a little bit off, but it's knowing ourselves as we go forward, and also our team and how they orient, also how they make meaning. Okay, all right, let's move to the next slide. Oh, we got Jacques' comments come in adaptive or limiting beliefs preventing me to fear or not the threats forthcoming. Yes.
Again, agentic, yeah.
Yeah. So what's the story? What's the story that I'm telling myself, right? And paying attention to what are my thoughts? And I work with some high-level athletes, and so what are the thoughts I'm telling me? What's the storyline? And is this based on facts, or it's a story I've created? And so that becomes really important. So thank you, Jacques, also to Leanne for sharing that. All right. So we're going to go to the second tool. And I know it's quick because it's short, right?
Because it's a 45-minute webinar, that's why.
It's 45, but you can take those away and continue your thinking and reflection. And reflection is good, but it needs action. So make sure that you move into action also from that perspective. So second tool, circle of influence and complexity. Think about, again, you're leading a division where budget reductions have been announced. I don't know if that's unknown to you as foreign or known. You don't have full clarity of roles, timelines. The geopolitical that we're living is amazingly chaotic, right? As we're going through. You don't have clarity of roles, the timelines or impacts. Your team's anxious, and maybe yourself too. You're a little anxious. You're asking questions, but you're not getting fully answered because this is maybe a new environment and people haven't lived this in a while. COVID was one that we lived through. So thinking about the circles, and this is a framework of control, no control, and influence. So control is center, influence is next, and then no control. So using that from that perspective, and please bring in the next one.
Yeah, Murat.
Murat, as for an example, we have some examples here. So think about that situation I just described and start writing down what you have no control, what you're not controlling in that circumstance, what you could possibly, and we have some here, government-wide budget decisions, we don't control that. I was going to throw in weather. We don't control the weather. Final number of positions impacted. Sometimes we're not at the level to make those decisions. Timing official announcements, decisions made above our level. And so think about that circumstance. Start writing down or adding in the chat others that you think that no control. Right. And then influence, how information is interpreted by your team or by yourself. Like, do you have some influence around that? The level of trust and psychological safety. What decisions do I make? When do I talk to individual? What space am I creating? What culture I'm creating? The influence that I have around my team. The quality of the conversations, am I keeping it at a high level and we're talking about the weather and nothing else? So the quality of the conversation, what are we talking about, what we're putting on the agenda or not, that we can influence that. And some will fall into control if we're organizing that meeting, and cross-team collaboration, how are we influencing that by the way we are acting, behaving with others, and it can even go down to what words and the way that I communicate in order to that it resonates with others. So if I'm if someone comes to me and gives me, it happened to me in my career, people would give me long emails with a lot of details, and I said, no, that's not going to work for me. You have to tell me what the issue, what are the situation, what are you proposing, what are you benefits, why are you saying that, and so on. So ability to influence becomes important of what how to communicate also. And then of course there's a control, and we a lot of us like control. A lot of us would like to think we have a lot of control, but I think this little framework reminds us, are we focusing on elements that have control or not? So your communication cadence, how often, and so on, your tone of voice, the words are important also that you're using, how you mentioned mentioned the structure of meetings, who's invited, who speaks, and speaks first, who doesn't, the invitation, the curiosity, and your reactions, and how am I reacting to these changes, especially in that one that the change has been announced and you have lack of clarity. And so think about that. Think about where do you spend your time thinking? Are you spending time thinking about XYZ that is now falling under no control? Or is it an influence? Or do I think I have it in the influence column, but really it's not an influence? And so it's important to start thinking about where am I thinking? Where am I putting my energy? And in the circumstance. And so Murat, bring in the rest here. We'll have two more.
Yeah.
So where do you think leaders typically overinvest their energy in this situation? Where do you think?
So you can write it in the chat, or you can open up your mic and just say where control, influence, or no control.
So where do leaders, and you don't have to admit it's you, like, where do you think leaders typically spend the information? Anyone? Take a guess.
No, it depends. Sorry, Isabella. It depends what kind of leadership level you're talking about. If you're talking about executive level, to whom I usually report, so I'm trying to control it, and at the beginning set up level of trust with my executive that I will inform them on a monthly basis, and then they will be available for me when I need it, or something like that. So if you're talking about leadership in terms of close superiors, it's different. It has to be, again, control, which I prefer to have set up in the early stages. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing that. And I'm seeing it in the chat, Jacques saying no control and control. Liane saying control, so the two extremities. And so it seems to be we spend a lot of time in the control, in the control, like trying to control things, but perhaps we have yet defined and we have yet to define them properly. Are we in the control or not, right? So I think that's important to add. Nadine is saying in the control. Murat, bring the other aspect to the slide here. So in complexity, as you see, leadership is a lot less about controlling outcomes. And Sophie talked about it a while ago from a change management, knowing what the outcomes are, and then we talked about, well, loose grip. I'm a pickleball player. I know if I'm holding it too tight, the ball goes everywhere. And so in the loose grip of, should I be looking at other aspects? Should I be open? Should I be working with that tension? And how can I influence? Can I get people to collaborate? How can I get people to talk about their sentiment around resistance? Right, in that context. So we talked more, leadership is less, as you say, of controlling outcomes and more about shaping the environment. And I think shaping, that's important, is a concept of how am I leading a team or leading this change in a way that facilitates or encourages people to respond in ways that can include, for example, I don't know what to do, or I don't feel comfortable in this situation, and they're able to be a little bit vulnerable in their ability to communicate that, so you are aware of it as a leader and you can relate to it and address it in a way that maybe would not have been available before. And so the adaptive leadership space creates that connection and ability to understand others. Sophie, vas-y.
So Sylvie, this is so interesting, and time is moving so fast, incredibly fast. So we have just a minute left with all these beautiful people. So I'm wondering that for us to move to tool 3, as we
Yes.
move to tool 3, know people that you can receive this presentation afterwards. But we since we committed to showing or presenting to you 3 tools, let's go to tool 3.
Okay. Thank you, Sophie, because I get, as you can see, I'm very enthusiastic about this information. And so tool 3, next one, Murat, because that was a little other exercise under control, no control, and influence. But now here is talking about leadership micro shift. And I love the micros because we are so busy as we are. So now from taking it from the you use the same current change that you experience or you're leading, and think about what's your default. And I've been talking about that. What's my default? Do I normally, like Sophie was saying, I go fast, right? Right. And so that kind of, what's your default? Are you more taking more time, going to get validate information? That's time. What's my default under pressure? And what would be more intentional leadership response in certain circumstances? So we have examples here to think about in your reflection. And, I move from providing answers to asking better questions. Better questions could be open questions, open-ended questions. I move from driving results to creating space for reflection instead of, we got to get this done. Well, let's think about this, right? From clarifying everything to holding productive ambiguity. How do we stay in that space of ambiguity? And what are the benefits of ambiguity? And so, Murat, put in the next one. So what's the one micro shift you'll practice this week, and to make it really practical? And so on your reflective, and you can put it in the chat, what is a micro, a little thing? James Clear talks about the 1% as we move. So what's the 1% that you're committing to? And if you put it in the chat, it's acknowledging it, and there's more chances of it happening. Okay, over back to you, Sophie.
Thank you. So Murat, to the next slide, please. And so we're going to bring it all together, which is, we've just talked about the loose grip approach. We've talked about change management. We've talked about adaptive leadership. What the exercise that Sylvie just presented to you was to look at the change management to the adaptive leadership. So what will you shift or try or experiment with in the adaptive leadership? So thank you for participating in the exercises. Now you've just seen 3 new tools, or tools that you may be reconnecting with, but both are important. Both the change management and adaptive leadership are important. So we are not in a or world, but we are in a and world. And both are important and are necessary in today's organizations and workplaces. So if we move to the next slide, I just want to finish off by saying that our change leadership program consists of honoring the change management and honoring the leadership, the adaptive leadership approach. And so if we move to the next slide, to finish off, to let you know that we offer a 20-hour program that's accessible and experiential on change leadership. It has 5 hours of individual coaching. We want it to be personalized to you so that it's meaningful, sense-making. It involves a psychometric tool, IEQ9, which is an IQ, not an IQ, but emotional intelligence tool that is really important for self-knowledge, awareness, working with our strengths. 15 hours of social learning, content, tools, and strategies in a peer context. And finally, working with developing more of, or fine-tuning, 5 change leadership competencies. Any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to contact Murat with your questions, and we'd be happy to answer those for you. We hope you appreciated and enjoyed this webinar. 45 minutes is quick, but it's a teaser just to let you know what's out there. And we were delighted to meet you. Yes.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you very much. Deeply appreciate it. It's small things, but shifting my mind around thinking and asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you for all. Any questions? I see some people. Thank you. Thank you. You're very welcome.
We have Leanne that's written, what about engagement with staff seeking their input? Do they have a say? And I think it may have been as a result of one or from the exercise we did.
Yes.
And we could answer yes. How are we involving staff to help a frame or to help us participate, to help us determine next steps and so on? Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you. Nadine is saying great content and insights. Lots to think about. Thanks. You're welcome, Nadine, and thanks for your feedback. Yes, so play around with it. We're inviting you. This is an invitation for you to play around with some of these new ideas that might be new to you, new tools. And some of you may say, but I'm not in a leadership role at this moment. So how does this apply to me? Well, change is all around us every day. So you may want to experiment with these tools in whatever context you are, where you are experiencing change.
Absolutely.
And I invite, if you have any questions, I know it's a little bit over time, but we'd be happy answering a few questions before we sign off, and to make sure you have enough time to have something to eat. It's important. Or take a break. Any questions on anything we presented?
When is the next one?
May 25th, Isabella. May 25th is the next one, but it's in French. So you're
En
welcome to
français.
join.
Yes, and feel free to share
Yeah.
and if another one would be required en anglais, we can explore that also. Yeah.
Yes.
I will share with network for sure. Thank you very much. It's great to meeting you. Enjoy your day. Hope
Thank you.
we will see you again one day. Thank
Absolutely. More to
Bye.
come. Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.